correct, Councillor Fox? Very good. So if everyone's good, we'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Moving on then to 2022 audits, our control documentation. Our Director of Finance, Chris Holbeck, will speak to this one.
Thank you, Mayor Fader. Good evening, Council. This item is an annual report that I do for Council. The 2022 audit will be starting up in February, and this control documentation is some pre-audit paperwork that we do with the auditors. Myself and the CAO review this document every year and update it. It's mostly just a general framework of how the town of Fort Macleod controls its processes and its people. It's pretty high level, and we like council to approve it because council is the ultimate governing body for this organization. So I hope everyone's had a chance to read it. It's the most interesting document you'll ever read. And if anyone has some questions or if there's something that you'd wish to add or change, just please let me know. Thank you.
All right. Anyone prepared to make a motion to approve the control documentation? Councillor Monteith makes a motion. Any questions on the document itself for administration? Councillor Monteith.
Ultimately, it's council's responsibility, but we rely on administration because we really don't get into the detail of this type of thing. And we are really relying on them that they are doing what they're supposed to do, because part of our code of conduct is we don't mess around in administration's functions. So it's a bit of a dichotomy, and we are really taking what they say and doing. And I've gone through this, and there's nothing offensive in it, and it's common sense and whatever. So I believe it's something that we would agree with, but it's certainly not flawless.
Very good. I'm assuming the red are changes from previous years, the red writing in the document?
Yes.
Okay. So not a lot changed from last year, just a little bit more detail.
Yeah, they changed the format a little bit, so we had to update it. And it is something that administration writes because we work in the organization and we know what controls are in place. It's a little bit of a communication thing with council so that council can read it, have an understanding of what our controls are, and agree that those are the controls that we have in place.
Okay, very good. Any further questions? Discussion, debate? If none, call it the question. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion to approve the 2022 document is passed.
Thank you.
All right, moving on then to item 3, draft letter to Minister Copping regarding EMS and rural ambulance response times. And we'll ask our Director of Community and Protective Services, Lisa Gillingham, to speak to this for us.
Good evening, Council. Thank you. I also have our Fire Chief, Alan Zuderman, here. So he's going to speak to a lot of the details if you have any questions or whatever for him. But there was a few meetings ago that Council received a letter from Ponoka outlining some of the issues that they're having with dispatch regarding their volunteer fire department. Council's intention at the time was to draft a letter in support of that letter, and in speaking with Alan, he was more than comfortable supporting that as well. Their fire department has seen not those specific incidents, but incidents similar, and just the communication between the dispatch center, the ambulances, and our fire department definitely are lacking, and we do want to make sure that we are supporting our municipalities as well as our fire department, and asking our provincial government to step up and hopefully make some corrections and changes and just make it better for our guys. So we are happy to present this letter that we'll be sending off to the Premier as well as Minister Coping. And then if council has any questions for Alan specifically, he'd be more than happy to answer them for you.
Very good. Yeah, we can start with a motion, or we can start with some discussion first, whatever council likes on this one. Councillor Monteith, did you have?
I'm just wondering, this is a letter supporting what other entities have come across. I'm wondering if we have specific instances that we could put in the letter that have happened here?
I think that was some of the comments we had when we seen the previous letter, right? Is how do we really nail down some specifics for our community? Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As for your question, specifics like the letter from Panoka where they had an itemized instances, we haven't had anything that detailed. Nothing that's recently that has been an issue, so that's why this letter really is a support letter for them, but it more states our issues about dispatching and communication, and so I had Lisa write it up in a little different slant that where it affects us more. We have had a few instances where, yes, we've been kind of in the same boat, but it hasn't been anything to that extent, and nothing in recent memory. We can probably go a little further into this when we get into the next item, which is, they're kind of tied together really. But to be specific, no, nothing to mention like an item that we've actually had an incident where we had to deal with the same thing that, like, for instance, Panoka did.
Any other questions from council? On the next item, I was just curious, is that, would you in your mind say that's part of the solution to what we're asking for in this letter?
It has been, yes. It kind of takes on another whole realm of things, and I can go back to about 2012, 2014, when the ambulances were taken over and we were part of an MFR program, and the MD purchased the 3 response units that put into Fort Macleod, Claresholm, and Nanton. At the time then, they were dependent on a set of protocols that was part of the MFR program, and at the time they neutered them so badly that it killed our MFR program because they said that we were not needed at the end of the program. So now we've come 180 degrees in the last, just recently, where AHS is now asking for our help and set out a list of protocols that we need to follow where we can actually begin to transport people. At one point, we did it once during the MFR program, and the MD, as well as myself, were engaged in almost a lawsuit because we did transport 2 people to the hospital here in Fort Macleod, which was part of the MFR program at that time. So now they're asking for our help. It's been a long, winding road, and I made my feelings known to Dr. Hanrahan, who is the doctor leading or heading this new method protocol that they're undertaking to try and alleviate some of the problems that they've had since day one. So, yeah, it's kind of tied together. This letter in response to Panoka's issue is a piece of the puzzle, whereas this is sort of a solution where we can. It will be a very rare situation And we have to follow a set of guidelines before we can actually go forward with the transport. I hope that explains it.
Yeah, no, I think that does. Thank you. Any other questions from council regarding the letter or a motion to approve the letter as written to be sent to the minister? Councillor Van Hagenbos makes that motion. Any further questions, discussion, debate? I think, like you said, I think the letter may be a little different direction, but it still addresses some of the concerns that we have regarding communication. And obviously, the better communication, the better it is for everyone. So, good.
I'll just add that last 10 days ago, we had a MD meeting where all the fire chiefs, and we had a Zoom meeting with Dr. Hanrahan and our, he's kind of our handler for AHS situations. And they kind of laid out this new program for us, and I basically almost word for word passed on to him already what's in this letter.
Okay.
This letter's going to Minister Copping,
Yeah.
which means not much, but
Well,
it's a step in the right direction. I mean, I was in the Deputy Minister of Health's office in Edmonton 5 years ago, and now they're finally seeing that they have an issue, so
Yeah.
it's an old story.
so must give you credit. You must have made a difference somewhere. making
I
all
don't
this
think so.
happen.
I think now that the wheels are falling off the ambulance, now they have to do something because now it's out in the public more.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, thanks for what you do. Ellen. Motion is on the floor. If everyone's good, we'll call it the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. The letter will be sent. And the next item, similar topic, we will ask our director as well to open the discussion on this item.
Sure, thank you, Council. Like Alan had mentioned, this is a protocol that's being adopted across the municipality, including some of the other detachments that are part of the Intermunicipal Emergency Services Agreement. In order for that to work across the municipality, because we do cross jurisdictions, every council that's part of that does need to support and approve our fire guys following this protocol. As you can see, a draft protocol and guidelines has been attached, and that was drafted by the MD with Alberta Health Services. And so this will allow our fire department, in those very rare circumstances where they may be on a scene and dispatch of an ambulance is too far out, that they would be able to transport a patient to the nearest health center. But it is under very specific guidelines, and a phone call to this person and that person, and then it may even take enough time that by the time all those phone calls happen, that ambulances are then on their way and ready to be on site. But if that's not the case, then our fire guys would then have the ability to transport patients and, of course, hopefully get them to the hospital in time and get medical attention. So we will be asking council to authorize our fire department and all of them identified in the Intermunicipal Emergency Service Agreement to transport critical patients in accordance with the criteria and process outlined in Operation 14. That's what our policy number will be. It will be different because it will be a town of Fort Macleod policy, and the final policy will be presented to council prior to the protocol being in place. Again, Alan would be more than happy to speak to this if you have specific questions.
Well, perhaps I can entertain a motion for council to approve this as per the recommendation. Councillor Fox makes the motion. Oh, sorry. With the motion on the floor, is there any questions for administration? Councillor Monteith?
I detected a bit of cynicism there, and I'm just wondering, if you've got to phone somebody to get authorization, what happens if they're not available? And is this just going to be another sort of tower of passing the buck until it doesn't do any good?
We've been assured that There is a said medical doctor in the dispatching center in Calgary, ready 24/7 to take a call. That's all I have to offer you, if that answers your question. It, at the end of the day, this just gives us another tool to, if by chance we, if we're waiting on a ambulance from Crow's Nest Pass and we have an accident on the one way where somebody needs to get some medical attention, we assess that on scene. We've got a number of EMTs, EMRs, and paramedics on the fire department that work for AHS. So in that, I'm confident that we can pass along enough information to that said doctor on call that he can make a proper decision. I'm not totally confident that they won't drag their heels long enough to wait for the ambulance. But in the rare case, it could happen that they'll say, yeah, you got to move them. So this just gives us that opportunity to do so.
You would think this would be in the best interest of AHS to use it as much as possible to free up that ambulance coming from the Crow's Nest Pass in that case.
We are a Band-Aid for AHS.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, and yeah, obviously we want to be able to do some of this because that's what was started.
For the good of the public, yes.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Councillor Van Ambros?
When EMR or whoever makes a call to STARS, is this part of the process? Or like what decision, like does step 3 need to happen? It's
After
where
you
you,
step 3.
I'm just wondering where do we start hitting bureaucracy here? Step 3, step 4?
Step 1.
Well, no, the standard approach is everybody gets there, but I don't understand a decline. Like how would they decline this? If you guys are on site, the ambulance isn't there, and there's a need to transport the victim, how does that doctor not approve this?
In his best estimation of the patient's condition and the stuff that we send to him or give him, vitals and so on and so forth, mechanism of injury, he can say, no, that patient can stay there for 20 minutes and wait for the ambulance. They're still going to defer to their own units. Let's face it, how shall I put this? Somebody has to accept the liability. And so the doctor, he has to be confident because then the liability has been passed on to him and he says yes or no. At the end of the day, somebody has to answer for something if it goes wrong. So I'm going to say that he's going to err on the side of caution, and he'll say, no, that person with these symptoms, yes, either has to go to the hospital or B, can wait 15 minutes for the ambulance to come from Vulcan or wherever it's coming from.
And somebody bleeding out on the highway is not considered a liability or something going wrong? Like that's not part of their...
Depending on their condition.
In your mind, Alan, is there any reason why we wouldn't approve this?
The way it's being set up, I'll put it this way. I don't want to be, we're not in the business of hauling people to the hospital.
No.
So that being said, in those rare cases, yes, I think we need to implement this and make it available to us.
Okay. Any other further discussion, questions? Councillor Fox?
In the event that you actually have to transport somebody, who's going to be held liable if something goes wrong with that patient?
Once the doctor has given us the go, then we are actually, I won't say contracted, but we are acting under AHS's direction. So ultimately, unless there's some grievous error on our driving ability or something to that effect, it'll be on them.
I should probably note too that the municipality will most likely be responsible for billing out directly to the patient, though AHS will not take over the billing from this once the municipality has become involved in the transport.
Great. Something we're doing anyways is what I'm hearing.
More to Lisa's comment, we're already doing medical first responses when the ambulance is, if it's a critical situation or the ambulance arrival is beyond 20 minutes, then we are toned out as well. So you're already paying for these medical response calls, so that really is not going to change any revenue streams in any way.
All right, Councillor Waitress.
Just for a point of clarity, in the submission here, it says, as along the lines of liability, it says that when that being said, it has been made very clear that these types of transports will be done at the risk and cost of the applicable municipality. And so along that point, that it says that that's a practice HS is not recommending, but they understand. So I believe you said that HS would be liable, but I just want to clarify that.
I'm not sure that I can give you a definitive answer on that. It's, at the end of the day, we've been told to transport by an MD representing AHS. So like I said, I think that clears us in the fact that he's told us, yes, this patient needs to get to the hospital. There probably is still the liability of transporting the patient and the fact that we have to get him from A to B, and then that would be on our ability to get him there. I should add that we realize that we have a response unit in our fire hall that is fully stocked, really at a BLS level, so basically, yeah, basic life support level. It mimics an AHS ambulance pretty much to the T, and that's what it was put in the fire hall for originally. So as I said, it's once we're not going to transport without that medical direction, and in my mind, I'm fairly confident that once that's been given to us to do that, then I can clarify that as well. But in my mind, if a medical doctor, medical director is telling us, yes, that patient needs to go and you don't need to wait transport, I think we've kind of passed off the liability.
Thank you, yes, and I agree that in an emergency situation, you know, ultimately, doesn't matter who's liable, somebody's life needs saving, and so, for sure, thank you.
I think at our meeting last week with the ICF group, the MD's fire chief was there. I'm sorry, his name's slipping. Kelly, and I think he clarified some of those comments as well. And overall, from what I understand, most of the other MD communities have supported this process. So sounds like there's broad support, but
I'm not sure what the other community has done. This was brought out at the fire chief's meeting, and it was to be brought to the towns. MD Council has kind of signed off on this and said, yeah, we're going to do this, because they've been proponents of this from day one. But since this came down with this newer version of AHS's Band-Aid, the MD Council wanted all the towns to sign off on it as well. So you're kind of at that point right now. I don't know where the rest of the towns are, but it's all happening at once.
yeah, and overall, I think this is something we've been wanting and asking for a number of years in order to be able to make use of the units that were purchased by the MD. Yeah. Not necessarily our first top priority that we want to do it, but that's something that we have the capacity to assist. Okay. Good discussion. Any other comments, debate on the motion, which is to approve the, what did we call it? The intermunicipal emergency services agreement to transport critical patients. If there's no further discussion or questions or debate, we'll call to question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Thank you, Alan, and for the work you do. All right, item 5 on our agenda tonight is 2023 membership review, and our CEO, Anthony Burdett, would like to speak to this one. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This review here actually stemmed from our last meeting when we brought up a membership, and it was asked whether that membership was budgeted for, and it had been budgeted for, which kind of started the conversation that there are a number of memberships that come up annually each year, and so we want to make sure that we're still on board with those memberships. And so what we've done here, by we I mean Chris, made this nice little summary of the memberships that would be coming up for the 2023 year. And so we could approve them, make sure we're on board with all of these different groups and organizations, and then they're already budgeted for, so they're there, but then once this approval is done, we're good till next year on our standard approvals. If anything else were to come new, if it was something new that we wanted to be a part of, obviously it'd have to come to council, that wouldn't be budgeted for. So the lists there, obviously we have Alberta Association of Police Governance. Oh, I missed Fort McLeod Chamber of Commerce on the very top. Old Man Watershed Council, Alberta Municipalities, Highway 3 Twinning Development Association, which we did approve last time, last council meeting. We have the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and Alberta Southwest Regional Alliance, with the total membership coming to $10,636.22. So if council would, our recommendation that council approves the following budgeted governance memberships for the 2023 year.
All right, anyone in council wish to make a motion to that end? Councillor Wolstenholme? So moved as per the recommendation. Any other questions, debate, discussion? There's some information attached, not for every one of the organizations, but I think we're quite familiar with all of them. If anyone isn't, then don't be afraid to ask. So the motion's on the floor, call it to question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. And we'll move on then to our in-camera for tonight. We have 3 land sales items, so we'll request a motion from council to go to in-camera for the 3 land sale items. Councillor Poitras makes the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, staff. Thank you.